people don't really see how remote this forest is, especially here in southern New Jersey.
It definitely has an allure of its own. It's a little creepy if you're by yourself. You know, you hear strange noises.
So the Jersey Devil legend was started in the late 1700s.
Stories growing up, I heard about the Jersey Devil. You know, my father talked about, we were going to go camping down here in the woods, and they were like, "Oh, watch out for the Jersey Devil. You know, it's gonna get you in the woods." You know.
So the Bigfoot history in the Pine Barrens, it goes all the way back to probably right around the same time as the Jersey Devil.
Sasquatch reports are pretty common out there, and the people out there, that's the hard part. The people, the Pineys as they call them, they're really insular people.
Standing right now on the shores of the Atlantic Ocean in Atlantic City, New Jersey. This area is sort of a Las Vegas of the East, on the coast, if you will. Casinos typically associated with the mafia, all kinds of things in this part of southern New Jersey. That's what's behind me. But what's behind Atlantic City is an area known as the Pine Barrens, which is over 1 million acres of a very unique habitat and environment found really only here in this part of New Jersey. It's an area known for a legend known as the Jersey Devil. Also, there's various Bigfoot stories, UFO, and other strange stories in this area. We're here in Atlantic City. We're not staying long because we're getting out of town and heading into the wilds of the Pine Barrens. So now we are in the heart of the Pine Barrens, as you can see behind me. Pretty crazy to think that this is only a 45-minute drive from Atlantic City, the ocean, that casinos, the glitz and the glamour, and now we are basically in the center of the Pine Barrens, surrounded by tens of thousands of acres of terrain that looks just like this, with not a whole lot else going on.
A lot of people don't realize how remote it is. It's 1.1 million acres of some of the most unique and different ecological forests in the U.S. There's a lot of animals that occur here that don't really occur anywhere else. It's millions of years old, just totally over time, just shaped by oceans, and it's basically like a giant dune, beach dune, with all sorts of different plants and stuff.
The terrain here is fairly flat, very minimal inclines and variations. You do get some, but from everyone else I speak with who's been in other parts of the country, they like the Pine Barrens because there's not a lot of up and down hiking, you know. So a lot of pine forest, a lot of bogs, a lot of cedar swamps. Just, you know, it's just one of those areas that has a lot of variations, and it's unlike any place in the world, actually.
You know, I find areas that are so remote out here that are just, it's hard to say because like there's trails and there's all sorts of signs of human everywhere you go, but there's areas in the Pine Barrens especially that are so deep and so hard to get to, especially when you take into account like the rains and everything, how deep the puddles are, just the barriers of the rivers and creeks and everything that goes through there. There's some real deep areas out here that seldom see human infringement and are very, very remote. And when people think of New Jersey, they think of, you know, the Turnpike, they think of New York City, they think of like all the major industrial complexes and you know, suburbs and all that, but you know, people don't really see how remote this forest is, especially here in southern New Jersey.
You can get easily turned around. I remember once I had a ranger come up on me. I was out in an area and it was raining, and she said, what are you fishing? I said, no, just hiking. She goes, you got GPS? I said, no. She goes, well, people get lost out here. I said, oh, all right. And that was it, you know. And that day I almost got lost. I got turned around a little bit, but I wound up coming back out at my car, and just before it started to get dark, so that was cool. But yeah, I don't know. It's like I've been a lot of different places, and it's definitely has an allure of its own. It's a little creepy if you're by yourself. You know, you hear strange noises, especially at night. I don't like coming out at night by myself. You know, I don't know. It's like nowhere else.
Now we are finally here. We're gonna be spending the next couple days exploring this area. From what I understand, it's had a history of Bigfoot encounters, which I'm personally skeptical of given the landlocked kind of geographical area here. We're in the Pine Barrens, but open-minded to hear the stories. You know, we're about 25-30 minutes from where Leeds Point is, the alleged birthplace of the Jersey Devil. We're going to be checking that out as well. So far I'm liking the area though. We're up behind our camp now. Look at this. This is a really cool looking bark, man. I like the way that looks. That's pretty neat. It's like it's stripped. It's a big tree. A lot of the other stuff is younger than this, so that's an old tree for this area at least. So we've got a special guest in this episode, Mr.
Special
Mike.
Guest indeed.
Mike Wanders. What's up, man?
What's up?
Mike decided to come down here. He's got a great channel. He does a lot of cool Bigfoot exploration and just awesome backpacking. Go check out Mike Wanders. We're glad to have him out here.
I'm here to steal all of Alex's ideas, by the way.
Exactly, yeah. We're letting it happen one time. You get a one-time usage, and that's it. But yeah, so there you go. This is the creepy river. I don't know what creek or river this is, but it looks like it'd be fun to kayak. Found what's left of a deer carcass here. Something eating it. A lot of hair and bones. More bones here. Got the cartilage and the spine here. There's that. And then what's this? We got what's left of the hoof and the leg.
Yeah, I would think so, huh? Plus, and those turkey vultures probably rip it up.
No, this is obviously a Jersey Devil kill site, guys.
Yes.
Just kidding.
That's what I thought when I pulled up.
Of all the strange stories spun about the Pine Barrens, none hold more prominence than that of the Jersey Devil.
So the Jersey Devil legend was started in the late 1700s. I don't remember the exact date when it occurred, but it was the legend went that Mother Leeds was the wife of a drunk husband that, you know, cheated on her, you know, kind of that abusive role in her life, and she had 12 children, and she found out that she was pregnant. And she, when she found out that she was pregnant, she looked up at the sky and said, "Let this one be the devil." How the legend goes, when she was going through giving birth in labor to the child, the 13th child, baby came out perfectly normal, like any other baby. Then it started to grow horns, hooves, started to grow leathery bat wings, and right in front of their eyes, it grew to this large size, and started to attacking everybody. And different stories are out there, the same exact piece of folklore, but it killed a few of the assistants that were helping out with the birth, and flew out through the chimney into the Pine Barrens in the stormy night.
So right now we're driving through Leeds Point, southern part of the Pine Barrens. This is supposedly the area of where the Jersey Devil legend was born. The Leeds family lived around here. There's a lot of debate as to where the actual house was, but there's not a lot to see around here nowadays. It's mostly just a residential area. It just says Leeds Point on the map, so there's not a lot going on. There's the historic Smithville village up here, which more than likely has some souvenirs and that kind of stuff, but it doesn't seem to be much, plaque or a statue or anything here for the Jersey Devil. It's just sort of, if you know about the folklore, it's in this area. Supposedly, this is the house where the Jersey Devil was born. There is some debate, of course, that there may be multiple houses, or even the house that the story originated. The Leeds family is no longer around, but here's one piece of the lore.
It depends on your perspective on the subject itself, but there's all sorts of stories and legends out there about the Jersey Devil. I tend to think that when the legend started, it was because the family was so disliked, and a lot of the Quakers believed that the Leeds family practiced Satanism and witchcraft, and they were kind of shunned from the community. Actually, one of the leading opponents of the Leeds family was Benjamin Franklin. They went on a huge media spree on trying to make the Leeds family look as terrible as possible, and that's probably where most of the legend comes from, where the Jersey Devil was their 13th child was a devil, and everyone should be scared of them. Don't go anywhere don't go anywhere in the Pine Barrens. The Leeds Devil might get you. Basically, to this day, people report seeing a creature like that. There was a big flak in 1909 where multiple people witnessed seeing, over a course of a year, seeing a large winged animal flying through the skies and terrorizing people. They closed schools, they sent militias out. It was a huge thing in folklore, but ever since then, there really hasn't been too many stories of the Jersey Devil, at least anything concrete. But it's something that really brings the Pine Barrens, puts the Pine Barrens on the map for legends and everything. People describe it anywhere between being a 3-foot tall, like horse-headed animal with wings and hooves, and just this weird, freaky, cryptid-looking thing. People describe it as almost being like this giant dragon-type creature. I've heard descriptions that are very similar to Sasquatch reports, which are a large, hairy animal with red eyes and screams, blood-curdling scream.
Stories growing up, I heard about the Jersey Devil. My father talked about with me, and he would chuckle and laugh. This is supposedly, when I was a Boy Scout, we were going to go camping down here in the woods, and they were like, "Oh, watch out for the Jersey Devil. It's gonna get you in the woods." And they always said if you see like a horse hoof print on the ground, and you hear a loud screech or see red eyes, the folklore is it's just a Jersey Devil, and you need to run and hide. It's gonna get you.
I haven't personally researched this to any great extent, but my research friend and partner Art has, originally started out to do a documentary on it, and he and I have talked about this, that there are so many variations on the descriptions and the sizes and the appearances. It's just like, in some they're flying, in others they're stationary on a rooftop, and again the facial features or the horse head and they all differ. Every person I've spoken to who has claimed to have seen it has a different version of it, Some people have mentioned the fact that it could be one of those bats that came from Africa. The name starts with a W, but the name escapes me at the moment. But that obviously couldn't pan out because it wouldn't survive in this climate, But that's the thing that really did it for me, is like, there's no way this thing could be real, is because there's just too many different variations.
I think what people sometimes mistaken, and I think the Jersey Devil, my opinion only, I feel it is folklore and tale. I think it's also a mistaken identity. When you hear these reports of these tales of the Jersey Devil, they're mostly at night. There's no visible images or captures or video of this creature. Eyeshine can be anything. Eyeshine could be a raccoon. It could be a coyote. Potentially could be a Bigfoot. Also could be Jersey Devil. But again, I think more on the folklore, mistaken identity.
It's a lot of word of mouth. You'll hear every once in a while someone saw the Jersey Devil while driving out on Carranza Road or something, or they saw a large flying object flying from tree to tree, and you'll hear those stories here and there. There's been attempts at making like Jersey Devil research teams and everything to go out and look for the Jersey Devil, but the legend just kind of, over time, especially with the growth of media and cameras and everything, just kind of died over time. It's still alive and well in Pineland's folklore, but it's very, I would say that the legend itself, there's not too many people reporting the Jersey Devil as much as there might have been in the early 1900s and the mid 1950s. But for whatever reason, it still remains a huge icon, especially in the cryptid community of, don't go to the Pine Barrens because the Jersey Devil lurks there. But, I would grow up and I would hear all sorts of stories about the Jersey Devil. I would hear all sorts of stories about, other things, cryptid-wise. But I would say that the Jersey Devil is forever going to remain the biggest piece of folklore, especially in this part of the country, for sure. To this day, I think that the legend stands tall, and, when people think of the Pine Barrens, they think of the Jersey Devil.
Nowadays, the Jersey Devil has become a cultural icon of not only the Pine Barrens and southern New Jersey, but the state as a whole. Locals pay homage to the legend, and you can find plenty of souvenirs from the Pine Barrens to Atlantic City and beyond. There is even a roller coaster at Six Flags, New Jersey, named after the beast, but perhaps most notably of all, you have the New Jersey Devils NHL hockey team.
So where are we at right now, Eric?
This is the Harrisville ruins. It was a glass making industry back in the late 1700s, early 1800s. There was a whole village across the street that we just pulled in on. There was a mansion and there was homes for the workers. Yeah, it had a whole industry back in the day,
And supposedly this is where the Jersey Devil went to?
Absolutely. Well, hey, wouldn't you go there if you were
What's the story behind that?
Well, it's just like any local legend, they have people that report seeing something flying up at them, and the glowing eyes and the screams and it's just to instill fear, I guess. Sometimes we do that just to keep our kids from going out at night.
Yeah, cool.
I don't know. It's just a cool part of history that not everybody gets a chance to see.
Beyond local prominence, the Jersey Devil has become world famous in cryptozoology circles and in the paranormal. One of my favorite shows, The X-Files, did an episode about the Jersey Devil during its first season. They had an interesting take on the legend, and the creature ended up being a group of cannibalistic feral humans, but the episode had quite a few Bigfoot references. Which brings us to a theory held by Eric and other researchers.
My personal thoughts on that is a folklore perpetuated by people having encounters with Bigfoot in the forest. The reason I say that because, there's just one. It's like, people used to think there was just one Bigfoot running around leaving tracks all over, back in the day. But if JD was a real thing, well, there'd have to be some type of, breeding population at least, right? I mean, it can't be a ghost or something that's been around for 300 years. It started back in the late 1700s with Mother Leeds, I've been to that area of the Pine Barrens. I've looked for the remains of the house, and, there's different legends and things, but I think personally that people are out in the forest and they see an 8-foot tall creature with red glowing eyes, and maybe it's flailing its arms like this, and it's got the hair hanging off the arm. It looks like wings, and it's screaming at them. Generally speaking, I think that there could be some substances involved, some maybe alcohol or other substances that is maybe contributing to their mindset. But that's my personal thought, and you know what? It's not a bad thing. We got a hockey team, the Jersey Devils. We got, it's just like Bigfoot's all over now, But it's a nice legend, and it's fun to have this discussion with people and to hear their thoughts on it. I had a person come into my shop the other day telling me she thought she saw the Jersey Devil when she was 17. Turns out she was drinking, and she agreed with me that it's probably, related. It's more likely that people are having encounters with Bigfoot and just wrapping their minds around the legend of the Jersey Devil.
So I wanted to sort of impromptu share my thoughts on the Jersey Devil story. I'm skeptical of it. I don't think it's a real creature, sort of a cryptid, undiscovered flesh and blood animal. If anything, maybe something paranormal, but from what the guys have been saying, it sounds very much just folkloric, maybe conflagration of different sightings of Bigfoot or other strange creatures that just sort of compounded into the story of the Jersey Devil. And of course, you have the very folkloric kind of origin story too, right? With the Leeds house and everything, birth of the creature. So definitely something I'm less kind of inclined to believe in. And I say this as somebody that's skeptical that Bigfoot could be in an area like this, given how it's basically cut off from everywhere else. At the same time, though, I do like the approach that the X-Files took with that episode, which is my favorite for sure of the series, with feral humans, almost the Bigfoot angle to the Jersey Devil. That's kind of a approach I'm taking with this episode, and one I really enjoy. So maybe that's what's going on. Maybe it's just one of those stories that kind of took off on its own. I can't really know, but you can't help but come out to an area like this and just appreciate kind of mysterious nature. And when you're surrounded by multiple large urban areas, you've got New York City a few hours north, you've got Philadelphia not far from here, Atlantic City to the south. So you're kind of in this bastion of sort of a wilderness area out here surrounded by humanity. So maybe that's why the story has persisted for so many centuries. I don't know, it's hard to say.
So the Bigfoot history in the Pine Barrens, it goes all the way back to probably right around the same time as the Jersey Devil. There's an old story in a history book about the Pine Barrens of Green Bank, where there was some militiamen who were out there that heard blood-curdling screams and seeing red eyes in the woods that scared them. I think that's like the first real story that I heard that put Bigfoot on the map. It was looked at as like a Jersey Devil story, but it obviously correlates to a lot of Bigfoot reports in other parts of the country.
Well, I mean, there is a history, but it You know, for me personally, like reports go back to maybe the early 70s. I know that there were native people here that experienced them in the past. I've spoken with some of them as well, but there's not too much that I've committed to my, keeping track of them, that type of thing. I just feel like in the day they were called wild man, not necessarily Bigfoot, So we do have that Native American history here in the Pine Barrens. Yeah, the Lenni Lenape was in this area. For me, the earliest reports actually happened around the early 1970s that we see reported, and they continue all through the 80s, 90s, up until now, with a lot of people seeing something strange, and again, often wrapping their mind around the Jersey Devil.
Over time, I would say that Bigfoot in New Jersey was more of a recent thing. I think people were so focused on the Jersey Devil. Bigfoot was kind of cast to the side and not really looked at as being a possibility for being out in the Pine Barrens. But there's BFRO reports going all the way back to 1950.
Back when we were filming Finding Bigfoot, when I heard we were going to New Jersey, I said, that's kind of odd, I guess. That's kind of weird. And then I found out that I had the camping segment on the New Jersey episode, and I'm thinking, what am I gonna do, camp behind a dumpster somewhere? Because I'm from California. I was born and raised in Southern California. My stereotypical exposure to New Jersey was, I wouldn't say Jersey Shore, but it was other television shows, essentially. And to me, it all looked like the Bronx or somewhere like that. I'm thinking, we're not going to find Bigfoots in the Bronx or, in that kind of Jersey. But boy, was I wrong. Boy, was I wrong. I've been to Jersey twice, and both times it just blew my socks off. The first time, the camping segment time, I got to go to the Pine Barrens. And the Pine Barrens is just fantastic. The tracking substrate is amazing. The Sasquatch reports are pretty common out there. And the people out there, that's the hard part. The people, the Pineys, as they call them, they're really insular people, and I don't blame them. I'd love to keep outsiders away from me as well. So they were kind of hard to get through. Like, hey, where's this, or where's a haunted place I can go to, or that kind of stuff. It's hard to get information out of them in the same sort of way it's hard to get information out of people in Maine or the Oregon coast or something like that. These localities that are insular and want to keep everybody else away. But man, I heard one of the best Sasquatch vocalizations I've ever heard in the Pine Barrens, and the witnesses I spoke to were fantastic. That's the kind of place I would love to go back and maybe spend a few weeks if I had the time.
There's plenty of tributaries here, waterways, and wildlife, blueberries, strawberries, all kinds of berries and substance here where something of a Bigfoot could come through and potentially sustain itself as it passes through with those the natural resources. We have a lot of farms on the outlying areas, so they potentially could go in and grab a chicken or grab a sheep or along those lines. We have wild turkeys here. We have owls, eagles, hawks, squirrels, raccoons, everything else that could possibly sustain this Sasquatch moving through the area.
Yeah, there's been some really cool intimidation reports that I've followed up on, investigated. Ones where a hiker or a poacher or somebody going out into the woods, kind of gets intimidated to leave, and they're kind of escorted out. One from the 1980s, not far from here, there was a young man who was solo camping, and he had cooked his supper, and he heard something circling his camp. And then when he got into his tent to go to bed, this thing screamed at him like a freight train. He could feel the volume in his chest, and he wound up screaming back at it, "Get out of here, leave me alone." And next morning, as soon as the sun started coming up, he was out of there, So that's an abridged version, but that's one of the ones I like. Yeah, there's been a lot, actually.
I had an encounter, and it's hard to say at the time what it was, but I was on a volunteer research team for reptiles and amphibians, and I was looking at this area on maps that is way deep in Wharton State Forest that I wanted to look for snakes at. So we go back there. It's about an hour hike in through super thick swamp and green briars, and eventually we get out to the paleo dune that we were going to research on. We walk further down the dune, and my friend goes off the trail to go use the bathroom, and I'm kind of walking up to this abandoned hunting stand. So I'm kind of sitting there looking around, and I hear what sounds like bipedal footsteps in the woods to my 12 o'clock. So I'm thinking that it's this hunter coming back to the hunting stand. So I'm kind of yelling, I'm like, hello, who's there? I'm kind of trying to get their attention, but obviously whatever it was never came in close. It stayed far away. I kept looking, and I saw what looked to be like a black shape just kind of go, like, it wasn't long enough for me to get a good look at it, but it was long enough to know that I saw something. Basically, at the time, I thought for sure that there was some guy coming up to bother us or whatever, so we kind of got out of there.
I was actually out with my friend who's a Jersey Devil enthusiast, and so she and I were out. It was on St. Patty's Day, 2010, and we went out to Bear Swamp Hill Tower Road. It's like Apple Pie Hill. It used to have another fire tower. Got taken out by an F-16 though, so nothing on top. We were out there and, doing what we usually do with the whoops and the knocks and things, and it was kind of like the weather we've been having with misty, drizzling, and cold. It was in, March. No activity, so I said, let's wrap it up. We're heading home, just talking about music, not even talking Bigfoot. We get into civilization, doing about 50 miles an hour in my Oldsmobile at the time, and this thing tore out from a development through a path that has chain link fence on both sides, doing probably about 30 miles an hour. It tore out in front of me. I got on my brakes. She slid forward, had a bottle of water between her legs. It sprayed up all over her. I avoided hitting him, and it kind of like went like, oh, like it knew it messed up, mid-stride. About 3 feet in front of my car, but hunched over, running on two legs. It was like 3.5 feet over the hood of my car. And she says, what the F was that? I went, deer? She goes, no, it wasn't. So, it happens like that, it's so quick. I wound up turning around and going back to see if I could find any track impressions on the side of the road, but it was all hard packed. Couldn't hear anything running through the brush. But where it came out and the trajectory it was running on, it would have gone through one of my customers' yards, and her house borders the power lines, which I always say is like a highway for animals to use, especially at night, And that particular set of power lines goes back into Wharton, which is where we're at now, and continues for miles and miles, and there's been a few other reports that have come in near this same power line.
Well, we're making our way now through, gonna go explore a little bit here in the areas around the park we're in. Really cool with the sand. We got Mike, Brian, Chewy, Luca. All right, so I'm gonna try it out. I think my camo pattern might work pretty well in this environment, so I'm gonna go try to disappear real quick. Let's give it a try.
I mean, if you're just scrolling by, you
just driving by, you look like a rock.
Yeah, it's like that rock.
You look like a rock with moss on it, and
if you lay down,
Try front facing. Ready?
Yeah, I mean,
it does. You look like a rock if you don't move.
This is a cool forest.
This is cool. The green right there.
We're just hiking along the river here. A lot of thick brush and piney looking trees. There's almost like a game trail right here. This looks like a game trail we're on right now. You got deer. Yeah, look at that. Pretty well worn, and the top branches aren't taken out, so I'm clipping all that. Yeah, man, so you've never really explored down here, huh? What do you think so far?
This area is pretty squatchy, man. Surprised me. You're driving off like such a busy highway with 16 wheelers and then take an exit and then you're just in thick woods.
Yeah, it's weird. We're just venturing around and come across this old stand. Old deer stand, looks like no one's used this in a while. Abandoned. Good place to hunt though, I bet. This is such a strange, look at this, like strange sand area. Look at all this sand, man.
I know, from going to mud, swamp to sand.
It really reminds me of like Ocala National Forest in Florida. It's got this sugar sand like this down there. There's definitely looks like somebody's been through here. So we've been joking around as we've been walking through the Pine Barrens here about the one of the most famous episodes of the show The Sopranos, which is one of my favorites. The episode titled Pine Barrens, where they get lost trying to dispose of this Russian guy out here. They get lost in the Pine Barrens and they spend a night out here, and we were joking, and we're gonna get lost now. We're gonna find an abandoned van out here and have to spend the night. It's gonna start snowing. We're gonna have to eat ketchup packets in there, so anyone that gets that reference will understand what I'm talking about. But that show actually was not, that episode was not filmed in the Pine Barrens, unfortunately. Yeah, they filmed it in some other state park in upstate New York, I think. So it's a little bit of a misnomer, but it is, you know, kind of Pine Barrens themed. So that's what we've been talking about, is we've been joking around and finding these old tree stands and infrastructure out here. But what a cool area, man. You could just spend days just wandering the endless pines here.
Could wander around for sure.
This guy knows how to wander pretty good from what I hear.
Usually wandering. Usually wandering.
Brian, did you get attacked by the Jersey Devil?
Unfortunately, I did, but
What
I got
happened?
away.
Go ahead, go forward. Let's see what happens. Jersey Devil survivor.
I got pieces everywhere. I'm sitting in my pocket. And I'm glad I brought 3 of these.
What kind of turned me from being a skeptic to a believer was on a BFRO expedition in 2021 with Eric Spinner. I came into it being very skeptical. I was very like, this is probably all BS, but you know, I'll come out here, kind of see what everyone's freaking out about. And you know, I expected people to be freaking out about like coyotes and you know, owls and stuff, because at the time I'm a naturalist, so I'm able to kind of distinguish all the different native animal sounds in the woods. But initially when I first get there, it sounded everyone was very professional. Everyone had walkies. Everyone was super with it. You know, you get a few crazy people that were kind of like, oh, the government drops off dogmen and Bigfoot everywhere. And I said, oh God, here we go. It's going to be one of these trips. So the first few nights, it was very lackluster for activity. It's, you know, we heard a couple whoops, nothing really solidified. Nothing to solidify anything. Then the final night happened, and we went to this area known as the Bowl. We had a team on one side of this cranberry bog. We had an all-female team in the Bowl, and we had the team I was on was at the other end, which was like the levee. So we all split up. We go to the levee, and we're kind of all sitting around talking to each other, and it's dead. There's nothing going on at all. It's like 12 o'clock, haven't heard anything, you know. We're kind of all sitting there, and you know, this guy across from me is starting to like talk about my generation and everything and how it's ruining everything. So I'm like, oh my God. Like, and then like as that's happening, we get a call over the radio, and one of the attendees at the Bowl is having a conversation with something. So I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what's going on? So we, as me being the new guy, kind of the newbie, they take me over to the bowl, and while the other two remained at the levee. And as we're walking down the trail to the bowl, we get two super loud power knocks to the left of us as we're walking back to the bowl. Obviously, at the time, I kind of freak out and I point. And obviously, the guy I'm with is like, don't point. So I was like, all right, I'll listen to you. I'm the new guy. So we get to the bowl, and we're all kind of sitting there. And one of the other attendees says, "Go ahead, do a whoop." And she does a whoop, and probably about 75 yards in front of us comes this whoop. Sounded like nothing I've ever heard before. If I could describe it as anything, it sounded like some sort of old world monkey, just like a gibbon whoop or something. She does another whoop, and it does another whoop, and it knocks on a tree. She does another whoop, it does a whoop and a whistle, and it's coming in closer to our position. So obviously, whatever this thing is, it's coming in closer to us and coming to check us out. So as this is going on, we have another attendee look over to the top of the ridge, and she says, "I see eye shine." And I'm looking towards where her finger's at, and I kind of see the car security lights on. So I'm like, oh, that's just the car security lights, And she's like, no, look to the right of that. So I look over and I follow her finger over to where I see these two royal blue eyes. And I wouldn't describe them as self-illuminating, but reflective off the moon. And at first they're kind of like this, and they kind of move from behind the tree on the other side, and then it ducks down, looks on the other side, and it's kind of like checking us out from behind this tree. So I'm looking over at it, and I'm like, holy crap, like, what am I experiencing right now? Because obviously at the time, it's not really my brain's having a really tough time processing what we're experiencing, because all of this is totally doesn't exist. So as this is going on, we start to hear what sounds like movement behind us in the cedar swamp, and it sounds like these groans and kind of like these, all I can describe is these like groans coming through the swamp behind us. And at the time I'm thinking, like, we're getting surrounded, we're getting flanked, because there's the eye shine up there, the whooping animal up there, and then behind us we hear the groaning and the footsteps. So at this time I'm kind of processing it all. I'm just like, this is insane. Like, I do these things really exist? Like, at the time, obviously I don't see what's going to confirm it for me. But as this is all happening, it's just, as soon as it started, it just kind of stopped. And, we stopped hearing the whoops, we stopped hearing whatever was behind us. Basically, we kind of disbanded. A couple of the attendees went off on a walk on the road. They said they heard another, like, howl. But after that, like, I think that's what kind of pushed me to believing that people are at least experiencing something out here that's worth looking into.
I was out on an expedition, and it was a group of us. We were in the B group, and we were out on this one back trail in this park, and we happened to notice, we look up, and there's this white orb floating through the trees. And my first question to Eric, who was with us, I said, hey, is there a parking lot nearby, a campground, a walking trail, power lines, anything? And he's like, no. And we looked at the map, and there was completely just surrounded by forested woods. There was nothing around. And then we radioed the A-team to come over with us so they can see this. And we happened to kind of look away, and one person said, hey, this thing is kind of dissolving. It was going and slowly losing its brilliance, and eventually just disappeared. And the hearsay out in the Bigfoot world is that these things potentially coincide with a Bigfoot sighting, or Bigfoot emanates from an orb. I necessarily don't believe that. I feel Bigfoot is a flesh and blood creature. Can't explain why that orb was in the middle of the woods out at night, where 10 other people had seen this and watched it disappear into nothing. my side of the Bigfoot research, I feel it's a flesh and blood creature. I do believe they do exist in New Jersey. I do believe that they do pass through. I believe there may be a family element here where a group of either, one or two families that do live in certain parts of our park here that the average person can't get to. When you have our thick cedar swamps, our cedar swamps can go miles in, and they're very tight knit. And the average human is not going to be trudging through a cedar swamp to get to that area to investigate it, unless you have on like muck boots and waders. So we don't know if those beings are in that area living with their family, or creating a home there and just passing through.
As far as like orbs and things like that, we've definitely had reports of some strange, what we call paranormal parallels that occur. We see lights, we see things in the sky. Definitely UFOs are part of this area. We see a lot of, and again, there are military bases nearby, so who knows? But I've personally had a couple fly over my house.
I'm a former MUFON investigator for New Jersey. I had access to hundreds of reports of objects over Wharton. We had hundreds of reports. I investigated a report of a guy who was down actually at one of the campgrounds here and had seen an object. He was night skying and object viewing, and he saw something come down out of the sky, and it was a white ball. And he said it kind of hovered over his area, probably about maybe 4,000 feet in the air. It hovered over, and then he started watching it, and it slowly started moving off. And he said that when it got to a certain point over his area, he thought he saw like a white beam, but he wasn't sure. He wasn't sure if it was like the campground that was on the back end of the park, where maybe there was something going on with lights and all that. But he said that he felt like a tension in the air, like he got his arms' hair started standing up. When he saw it came down, hovered a little bit, then it went back towards the west side, and then when he noticed that it stayed a little bit, and then all of a sudden it just shot up. He said straight up at a very large, fast pace. There was another incident of somebody seeing something landing in the woods down here, to where they were out hiking with their buddies at night from a camping trip, and something came down out of the tree line. They saw it glowing through the trees, and they saw something that just like came down low. He wasn't sure if it landed, but he noticed that there was this white ball object. He said pretty big, and it was like hovering in the middle of the woods. And when they started walking towards it, he said it just took off very slowly and then disappeared into the air from there. But there are many reports through the database that I was able to look at and wanted to investigate. But there's just so many, and you have to fully, look at those reports, vet the reports yourself to understand what's going on and see if there's any truth to them. But there's probably about a good 20 reports in this area.
In late 2024, the news of mystery drones spotted across the skies over New Jersey made international news, even being cited as national security risks. The skies over the Pine Barrens were also host to some of these mystery drone sightings.
I did have the opportunity to sit with Rob Freeman, World UFO Traveler, and David Palachek, the MUFON Canada director. They drove down from Canada to investigate this whole drone fiasco, it was happening. And they were out at Seaside Heights Christmas weekend. It was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I was invited to join them and met them and looked at the gear they were using, and they brought out all different kinds of gear, thermals and infrared and full spectrum cameras, a UFO DAP. Unfortunately, that night it was overcast and rainy, so you really couldn't see much from the top of the home that we were at. And we had flight radar running, we had ADS-B running, we had a Geiger counter running, EMF detectors. So we ran the whole gamut of the hardware to try and help us detect any anomalous objects that came into that area or the atmosphere. But that entire weekend, we did not see one drone. I had an experience with a drone at my residence one night, and I was monitoring a couple of the Facebook pages, and somebody said one of the drones was in Bricktown heading south towards this area, Tom's River. I quickly ran outside, and when I looked up, I observed what appeared to be a large flashing red object in the sky. Didn't hear the typical drone propeller hum, but you heard something. It was a larger, more deeper like sound. And when I was watching it, it wasn't your typical plane. It didn't have the dual lights on it. It had one single red light that would strobe back and forth about every 5 to 8 seconds. And it was at a pace to where it wasn't a plane pace, like a typical flying pace, but it was slow enough to where you could say, okay, this is definitely a drone, the way it's behaving. And I observed it for about, I'd say a good another minute or two, ran back in the house and grabbed my camera, and I was able to video record the drone flying over me. And then I observed it go out about another 2 or 3 miles, and I turned and looked, and a second drone was on my right side heading more easterly, and I was trying to capture that one. And when I turned back to observe the blinking red drone, that drone stopped and did an abrupt 90-degree turn. So we know that there's no helicopter, there's no airplane that's going to do that quick. So I definitely knew it was a drone at that point. And I observed the drone now heading east towards the water. I hopped on my vehicle to try and do a chase to get to a parking lot that I knew of where I can observe a larger area, swath of the sky. I observed the drone come up the east side and then shoot up towards northbound, back up towards the Bricktown area. And that was my my drone experience.
For sure, we have a lot of different legends as far as like the Lady in White down by Carranza Memorial, and then also at another bridge off of Route 206. And there's the story of the White Stag, which is a legend that this stagecoach was bringing passengers to one of the local taverns or inns, and the bridge had gotten washed out, and the White Stag appeared, and it, I guess, stopped the stagecoach from going over the bridge. It's like anything else. Every area has its urban legends. We recently did a little thing on the Blue Hole, which apparently has, resulted in people losing their eyes and getting scratched up and even dying. And this, it's like a blue body of water in South Jersey, which again isn't far from here. I kind of put that legend to rest. I even got underneath to see that it's not bottomless by putting my camera in the water. But again, I always try to be like focused on one thing. I'm not a jack of all trades, so while I'm interested in hearing about those things, I don't necessarily commit them to memory. You know what I mean? I'm more on the Bigfoot end. People talk about Dogman and stuff like that. I've heard reports, but I've never seen any indication of that here.
I have one weird story that intrigued me, and it deals with Eric and his team and Art and Eric Mintel. They were out at we call an area called the Bowl, and when they were taping and filming their episode, they were out there talking and amongst themselves, and they had a medium out there who was very sensitive to certain aspects of the paranormal, and they said he sensed something, and then when they were talking, all of a sudden a tree limb behind them just moved. There was no wind, nothing around, no low pressure system, nothing, no wind, nothing. Nobody moved, and all of a sudden you see the limb on the video just start shaking like this. And it was only a single limb that entire time just shaking. And when they went up to investigate around, there was nothing around. They don't know what happened. So it could have been paranormal. This area is known for paranormal activity, from people seeing apparitions to orbs of different colors and sizes, and reds and blues and oranges and whites of different sizes. There actually is even people who are buried out here. Their urns and their ashes. People, when you pass on, if it's something you like, people leave those wishes to their family saying, hey, I enjoyed this park. Would you put my ashes here? So they could be spirits from the departed.
do you think, man? Spent a couple days in Pine Barrens.
Dude,
here.
Pine Barrens is the real deal. It just seems like way thicker than I thought. I'd only been here at night, and really not much happened. My girlfriend said she thought something happened, but to be back here, it's way more expansive than I thought. Walking around last night, I thought that was pretty cool. Nothing really happened, but it's just one of those places where like you feel like an encounter might happen here. So
Yeah.
I believe people that they've seen stuff out here. Yeah.
So Mike Wander's solo backpacking trip through the Pine Barrens when?
Yeah. What's it called? The Batona Trail or something? I might do it. Might do it. Yeah, I'm down.
Putting the pressure on you right now.
Yeah.
No, but man,
You're gonna come, man. You're gonna do a backpacking trip together.
Yeah, that'd be sweet. It was a good time connecting.
Yeah.
And what a cool area. So
Yeah, it was awesome. Thanks for having me out here, man.
for sure, dude.
Yeah.
So we've been here a couple days, man. What do you think of the Pine Barrens?
I mean, for my first time being here and hearing the stories, I like to keep an open mind. There could be something that could pass through here. There's enough land, and we've only, like I was just saying, we've just explored just a little piece of what's out here. So there's potential. There's a lot of game. There's a lot of food. A lot of different areas. It's an intriguing place, for sure.
Yeah.
Anything could be out there. So yeah, I think there's a possibility that there could be something lurking around. Yeah.
This area, you have to approach with an open mind and cautiousness. It's a vast area. It's 1.1 million acres. You can run into and encounter anything out here and anyone. Always, I always hear people saying, be prepared for the worst. Definitely prepare yourself when you go in, bring a backpack, let people know where you're going to be, bring supplies because the weather here changes. Keep an open mind to this area, this Wharton State Forest, because there is things out here that we see and we have no explanation for. We have to look at it from a scientific perspective and say, what can it be, but what can it not be? What can it not do? And then we take that and then 360 it, saying, okay, what can it do? And we try to debunk potentially what it is, looking at it, observables, logic thinking, keeping an open mind to the possibilities that anything is possible.
I never anticipated myself personally getting into. I mean, I had an interest, but I never dreamed of becoming a actual researcher or an investigator, an organizer with the BFRO, or having done the extent of the travels I have in pursuit of that, discovery. And I'm not trying to prove it to anybody. I'm not trying to, gain fame and wealth as a result. I enjoy being out in nature, and the Pine Barrens just happens to be in my backyard. And it's a great place to get out and enjoy nature. And I've learned a lot about nature and camping and everything else. I was from New York originally, so we didn't do any of this,
I would say that the as explored as New Jersey is the most densely populated state, in the United States. 10 million people live here, and they all live in small parts of northeastern New Jersey or southeastern New Jersey or southwest New Jersey. There are still areas out here that are very unexplored, very remote, and I think there's a lot more to be seen and explore, especially in New Jersey, not just New Jersey, like anywhere in the U.S. where there's still large forests.
So, as you can see, the Pine Barrens is a fascinating and mysterious place to visit. Whether it be the legend of the Jersey Devil, Bigfoot, or any of the other strange tales found here, one understands why this place has such a mysterious aura simply by looking at it. Some of the stories are more believable than others, but all in all, the Pine Barrens is an absolutely unique place.